The sun was setting behind the jagged towers of the royal city, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The air smelled of smoke and sweet incense, drifting from the temples that lined the grand avenues. From the highest tower, the Alpha King's palace gleamed, its dark stone walls engraved with twisting symbols that seemed to pulse under the dying light. The city had a quiet fear of its ruler, whispers of his power traveling from tavern to market carried in trembling voices. Leora moved through the crowd with careful steps. Her small frame and soft brown hair made her nearly invisible among the nobles and guards, yet her amber eyes caught every movement. She had arrived from the village beyond the forest, a place scarred by famine and shadowed by fear of the king. Her journey had been long, and exhaustion weighed on her muscles, but determination kept her moving forward. She needed refuge, and she had heard stories that the Alpha King was not only powerful but sometimes merciful. As she entered the courtyard of the palace, the atmosphere shifted. Guards in black and gold armor stood at rigid attention, their eyes cold, scanning everyone who approached. Leora swallowed her fear and held her head high. She had traveled far to reach this place. She would not turn back now. The festival in the palace gardens was already underway. Colored lanterns hung from the trees, casting a golden glow across the marble paths. Musicians played strange instruments, and dancers twirled in costumes that glittered in the evening light. Nobles and dignitaries laughed and sipped wine, their conversations hushed and polite. Yet underneath the beauty there was a tension, a sense that everyone was waiting for something or someone. Leora's heart beat faster as she stepped closer. And then she saw him. The Alpha King stood at the center of the garden, a figure that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Kyle. His dark hair fell in loose waves around a strong face that bore the weight of centuries. And his eyes were golden like molten amber, piercing through the crowd as if he could see straight into the soul. Every whisper in the garden seemed to die in his presence. Leora's legs felt like stone, yet she could not look away. The stories were true. He was fearsome, yes, but there was also something in him that called to her. Not danger, but loneliness. A shadow hidden behind the golden eyes. The crowd parted as he moved, and Leora found herself walking without thinking, drawn toward him like a moth to a flame. Her steps faltered as she neared, and a sudden wave of weariness overcame her. The journey, the hunger, the sleepless nights, all of it caught up with her. She felt her knees buckle. Kale's hand shot out instinctively, catching her by the elbow. His grip was firm but not cruel, and for a moment, Leora was aware of the warmth of his presence, the faint scent of smoke and sandalwood that clung to him. "You are far from home," Kyle said, his voice low, a deep rumble that seemed to echo in the quiet corners of her mind. I seek refuge," she whispered, barely able to form the words. Her head swam, and she closed her eyes, leaning against him for support. Her exhaustion was overwhelming. Kale's golden gaze softened, just for a flicker. "Then rest," he said. He did not guide her to a chair or to a chamber. He simply allowed her to lean against him, and in that moment she did something she had never dared before. She rested her head on his broad shoulder, letting herself sink into the strange, unspoken comfort that radiated from him. Her body, so tired and fragile, finally found stillness. The music and chatter of the festival faded into a blur. Leora's eyelids closed, and for the first time in weeks she allowed herself to dream. She dreamed of forests untouched by fire, rivers that glimmered under the moon, and a quiet, steady warmth that wrapped around her like a protective cloak. The people around them whispered, their voices tinged with curiosity and fear. Nobles tried to approach to guide her away, but Kale's presence was a barrier they dared not cross. His aura was more than power. It was command. Those who met his gaze could not move, could not speak, and often did not dare to breathe. Time seemed to stretch. The festival lights twinkled like stars. The wind carried faint scents of jasmine and smoke, and Leora remained asleep on his shoulder. Kale did not move her, did not command anyone to act. He simply watched, silent, the weight of centuries pressing down on him even as he stood in the golden light of the festival. A part of him wondered why he felt this pull, this strange need to protect a girl he had only just met. She was fragile, yes, but there was something in her spirit that called to him, something that whispered of redemption, of a chance to feel human again. As night fell, the festival ended, but the palace was far from quiet. Torches lined the marble halls, casting flickering shadows. Kyle's steps were silent as he led Leora through the corridors, her head still resting against him. The servants dared not speak, and the courtiers watched from afar, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. He brought her to a private chamber, a room that smelled of cedar and candle wax. The windows were open, letting in the cool night air and the distant sound of the city below. There was a bed, soft and inviting, and Cale gently lowered Leora onto it. Her sleep was deep, unbroken, a rare thing in this world of shadows and whispers. Kyle stood by the bed, watching her rise and fall with every breath. He did not touch her again, did not disturb the fragile peace she had found. Yet he could not leave. There was a storm within him, a quiet, roaring need that he did not understand. He had ruled for centuries, seen kingdoms fall and faced enemies that would make ordinary men tremble. Yet this small, fragile girl had undone him in ways no sword or crown ever could. Hours passed and the night deepened. Outside, the moon cast silver light across the floor, illuminating the faint curve of her face. Kyle's fingers twitched, his golden eyes never leaving her. He did not know what the future held, whether she would be safe, whether she would stay. All he knew was that the moment he allowed her to rest against him, something changed inside him. When Leora stirred, it was nearly dawn. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, and she saw the dim outline of the chamber, the bed she had never expected to be in. And then she saw him, Cale, the Alpha King, standing near the window, his silhouette tall and commanding, but his expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, she froze. Her mind scrambled for words, for explanations, but none came. The warmth of the bed and the soft candlelight contrasted with the fear that gripped her heart. She had no memory of being brought here. She had only slept. Cale's voice broke the silence, calm and low. "You woke." "Yes," Leora whispered, her voice small, uncertain. I don't understand. How did I—" "You fell asleep on my shoulder," Cale said, his golden eyes softening slightly. "I could not leave you there. It was not safe." Leora's heart raced. "But the festival? The crowd? They would not have stopped you," Kyle said quietly, almost to himself. "I had to." She tried to rise, but her body was stiff with exhaustion. Cale moved closer and gently pressed a hand to her shoulder, steadying her. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down her spine, but she did not pull away. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. Kyle inclined his head, silent for a moment. The air between them was charged, a tension that was not fear nor anger, but something more fragile, more dangerous, something that could not yet be named. Outside the window, the city was waking. The sun's first rays touched the towers and the streets below, but within the chamber, time seemed suspended. Two souls, strangers yet connected by fate, hovered on the edge of something profound, something that would change both their lives forever. And as Leora's eyes met Cale's golden gaze, she realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The palace, the city, the kingdom, all of it was a backdrop to the strange, unspoken bond that had formed in the quiet hours of the night. And neither of them, not yet, could predict the storms to come. For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King felt uncertainty. And for the first time in her life, the Omega Girl felt hope. The morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long, pale beams across the marble floor. Leora sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers clutching the hem of her simple dress. She had slept longer than she intended, yet exhaustion still lingered like a heavy cloak around her shoulders. Her mind raced, remembering the strange events of the night. Falling asleep on the Alpha King's shoulder, waking in his private chamber and seeing him standing silently, watching her with golden eyes that seemed to pierce through everything. Cale had not spoken much since dawn. He had remained at the window, his silhouette framed by the rising sun, silent and immovable. Leora's pulse quickened. She wanted to ask questions, demand answers. But the weight of his presence made her hesitate. He was fearsome, yes, but there was something fragile in the way he held himself, something wounded hidden beneath the armor of his power. Finally, Cale spoke, his voice low, calm, and steady. "You must eat. You need strength." Leora nodded, unsure of what else to say. She followed him through quiet corridors that smelled of cedar and old stone. Servants bowed but said nothing, giving them space as they moved toward the dining hall. The palace was enormous, filled with shadows and echoes, corridors twisting like a labyrinth. Leora felt small and fragile among the towering pillars and grand arches, but Cale's presence beside her was a strange comfort. even as it made her heart beat faster. At the dining hall, a simple meal of bread, fruit, and warm tea was laid out. Cale gestured for her to sit and then sat opposite her. He did not eat himself, though he watched her carefully, his golden eyes flicking over her as if reading her thoughts. "You are far from home," he said again, almost as if he were repeating a prayer. "Why come here?" My village. They were in danger," Leora said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have no family left. I hoped perhaps the king would offer shelter." Cale's expression did not change, yet his eyes softened. "You should not have come alone. The world beyond these walls is not kind to those without protection." "I had no choice," she admitted. Her amber eyes met his, and for the first time she dared to study him closely. He was older than he looked, though not old in the way humans age. There was a sharpness to his jaw, a strength in his posture, and yet his eyes carried the weight of centuries of solitude, battles, and loss. Something in her stirred, compassion, curiosity, a strange pull she did not understand. Cale studied her as well, though his thoughts were clouded by something darker. He had seen many humans come and go in the centuries he had ruled, but this girl was different. Her spirit had a light he had almost forgotten existed, and her presence, quiet and gentle, was unsettling. She stirred emotions he had buried long ago, the need to protect, the need to trust, the need to feel human again. After the meal, Leora rose to leave, feeling both grateful and nervous. She did not want to impose, yet she was aware she could not remain in the bedchamber forever. Cale's hand stopped her gently, holding her wrist, not tightly but enough to make her pause. "You cannot wander the palace unsupervised," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "There are those who would harm you, or use you for their schemes." "I am not afraid," Leora said, her voice small but steady. I can protect myself." Cale's golden eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. "You do not understand. The threats here are not ordinary. They are subtle, patient, and deadly. You would not survive alone." Leora felt a shiver, not from fear, but from the intensity of his gaze. She realized that his warning was not meant to scare her, it was truth. The palace was full of whispers, plots, and shadows, and Cale had lived through centuries of it. Yet despite the danger, she did not want to leave. Something about him drew her closer, even as reason screamed for caution. Over the next days, Leora settled into a strange routine. She explored the palace under careful supervision, learning the corridors and hidden passages, the library filled with ancient tomes, and the gardens where strange flowers bloomed even under the moonlight. Cale allowed her freedom, but he remained nearby, silent and watchful, a constant shadow at the edge of her vision. During their walks, Kyle spoke little of himself, revealing only fragments of his history, a kingdom once filled with laughter, a curse that had taken much from him, and battles that left scars not seen by the eye. Leora listened, sensing the weight of his words, and felt a strange empathy for him. She realized that behind the fearsome Alpha King was a man trapped by his own power, and a curse he could not fully control. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Leora wandered into the palace library. The room was vast, filled with scrolls and books stacked to the ceiling. Cale followed silently, his steps soundless on the polished floor. She ran her fingers along the spines of old volumes, feeling the pulse of history in her hands. "Curious," Kyle said, standing behind her. "It is rare for someone like you to take interest in knowledge beyond necessity." "I want to understand," Leora said softly. "If I am to stay here, I need to know the truth. About the kingdom. About you." Cale's gaze softened, a shadow of a smile crossing his face. "Very well. But know this, some truths are dangerous. Knowledge can protect, but it can also harm. Be careful what you seek." Over the following hours, he shared stories of the kingdom, of the line of rulers, and of the curse that had haunted his family for generations. Leora listened, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. The curse was strange, dark, and unforgiving. It fed on isolation, on fear, on hearts that longed for something they could not have. Cale had survived it, but only barely, his soul scarred by centuries of solitude. Yet even in his darkness, there was a glimmer of light when he spoke of her. Leora could feel it, a subtle warmth that spread through her chest. He did not touch her, yet his presence was like a shield, comforting and frightening at the same time. Days passed, and the bond between them grew. Leora's empathy allowed her to sense Cale's emotions. the deep sadness and occasional sparks of hope. She realized that her own feelings were changing. She feared him. Yes, but she also felt an inexplicable pull toward him, a desire to understand him, to help him, to be near him. Cale, in turn, found himself strangely protective of her. He would not admit it even to himself, but her presence softened the curse's grip on him. When she laughed, even quietly, he felt a warmth he had not known for centuries. When she faltered, he ached to catch her, to shield her from the weight of the world. One night the tension became nearly unbearable. They walked through the palace gardens, the moonlight casting silver patterns on the ground. Leora paused by a fountain, her reflection shimmering in the water. Cale stood behind her, silent, his gaze on the moonlit ripples. "You are changing me," he said quietly, almost a whisper. "I do not understand it, but I feel it." Leora turned to look at him, her heart pounding. "Changing? How?" "Softening," he admitted, the word foreign on his tongue. "You make me human again in ways I thought impossible, and yet, the closer you are, the stronger the curse grows. It feeds on my longing, my desire, even my care for you." Her hands clenched, a mix of fear and resolve. "Then I will be careful. I do not want to hurt you, but I also do not want to leave." Kyle's golden eyes softened, the shadows around him flickering with emotion he rarely showed. "You do not know the dangers," he said, his voice low and intense. "If the curse awakens fully, it could consume both of us." "I will risk it," she said, surprising even herself. "Because I want to understand you, Cale. I want to be near you, even if it is dangerous." The words hung in the air, fragile as glass yet impossible to ignore. For a long moment neither moved. The garden was silent, the night holding its breath. And then the sound of a distant horn echoed through the palace, sharp and urgent. Cale stiffened, his body tense. "They know we are here," he said, voice low and warning. "Someone is watching, waiting, and they will not hesitate." Leora's heart leapt. "Who?" Cale's gaze darkened, his golden eyes narrowing. "That is something you will see soon enough. But for now, stay close to me. Do not wander alone." Leora nodded, fear mingling with excitement, understanding that her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a girl seeking refuge. She was tied to the Alpha King, bound by unseen forces, by a growing connection neither of them fully understood. And as they turned to leave the garden, shadows moving along the marble walls, both of them knew. The world outside was dangerous, the curse was growing, and the bond between them, fragile, intense, and forbidden, was only beginning to take shape. The palace had never felt more alive or more dangerous. Every corridor echoed with the whispers of the unseen. Every shadow seemed to twist with hidden movement. Leora walked close to Cale, her amber eyes alert, sensing the subtle shift in the air. She could feel the tension radiating from him, a mixture of power, caution, and a silent warning she could not ignore. "Something is not right," Kyle said, his voice low, almost a growl. His golden eyes scanned the hall, sharp and precise. "They are near. Do not let anyone pass you." Leora nodded, gripping the folds of her dress. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the strange mix of exhilaration and tension that came from being close to him. She had learned to read his movements, his subtle gestures, the way he could sense danger long before it arrived. It was both terrifying and comforting. The palace corridors stretched like a maze, ancient and twisting. Torches cast flickering shadows on the stone walls, and the distant clatter of metal against stone hinted at unseen activity. Leora stayed silent, letting Kyle lead, feeling the pulse of his presence like a shield. She had begun to trust him, even though the warnings of the curse echoed in her mind. They reached the library, a vast chamber filled with old tomes and dusty scrolls. Cale paused, glancing at the towering shelves. "Here," he said. "This room is safe for now. We can think, plan, and understand." Leora allowed herself to breathe, brushing her fingers along the spines of ancient books. Her touch was careful, reverent. She felt the weight of centuries in these pages, the power of knowledge that had survived wars, curses, and kings. Cale stood close, silent, but she could feel the tension in his shoulders, the constant readiness to protect. "Tell me more about the curse," she said softly. "I need to understand it if I am to stay here." Cale's gaze darkened. "The curse is old, older than the city itself. It feeds on desire, on longing, on hearts that reach for something they cannot have. It twists power into isolation and isolation into torment. I have survived it, but only barely." Leora's breath caught. "Then why?" Why am I safe around you? Or am I not? You are not entirely safe, Kyle admitted, his voice a low rumble. The closer you are, the stronger the pull. The curse recognizes the bond forming between us. It is unnatural, dangerous, and yet it is also a chance for redemption, for both of us. Leora considered his words. Fear and fascination danced within her. She had never encountered a man like Kale, a ruler so powerful yet burdened by something invisible and terrible. And yet, despite the danger, she felt drawn to him. The pull between them was real, undeniable, and terrifying. A sudden noise broke the tension, a faint metallic scrape echoing from the far end of the corridor. Kale's body tensed immediately. They are here, he said. Follow me and stay close. They moved quickly, silently, through secret passages known only to Kale. Leora felt her heart pounding in her chest, the thrill of danger mingling with a deep sense of trust. She had learned that wherever Kale led, she would be protected, if she could keep pace with him. The shadow that had been following them for days finally revealed itself. A figure cloaked in black stepped from the darkness, dagger in hand. Its face was hidden beneath a mask, but the intent was clear. Kale's hand moved lightning fast, and the dagger clattered harmlessly to the floor. Who sent you? Kale demanded, his voice like steel. The figure said nothing. Instead, it lunged toward Leora, forcing Kale to step between them. His body moved with fluid grace, blocking and striking with precision. Leora's breath caught, and she realized she had never seen anyone move like him. Every motion was controlled, purposeful, deadly. You are no ordinary king, Leora whispered, both in awe and fear. Kale's golden eyes met hers for a moment, a silent acknowledgement. And you are no ordinary girl, he said. Now stay behind me. The fight was swift. Shadows moved and twisted, daggers clanged, and Kale's strikes were both brutal and beautiful in their precision. Leora felt the pull of adrenaline, the rush of danger that made her pulse race. When the last attacker fell to the ground, unconscious but unharmed, Kale finally allowed himself a long exhale. You see, he said, his voice tense. Even here there are those who wish to use you, or me. The palace is never safe. Leora nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. Now, Kale studied her closely. There was a strength in her, a spark he had not anticipated. She was fragile in body, yes, but her spirit was sharp, and her empathy, her strange, rare ability to sense and calm emotion, was stronger than he realized. It was that empathy that had kept him from succumbing to the curse these past days, even as it gnawed at his heart. Over the following nights, their bond deepened. Leora discovered that she could sense the subtle changes in Kale's emotions, the quiet storms that raged behind his golden eyes. She could feel when the curse stirred, dark and hungry, tugging at him, trying to reach her through their connection, and yet she did not recoil. She wanted to help him, to be near him, to understand the man behind the crown and the shadows. Kale, in turn, found himself revealing more than he had intended. He showed her hidden chambers, secret libraries, and ancient gardens that bloomed only under the moonlight. He shared fragments of his past, not the battles or the politics, but the loneliness, the fear, and the rare moments of joy that he had almost forgotten. Leora listened, her presence soothing in ways that no sword or shield could. One night, as they walked through the moonlit gardens, Kale paused by a fountain, the water shimmering like liquid silver. Leora stood beside him, her reflection mirrored in the rippling surface. You feel it too, don't you? Kale said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I do, Leora admitted. It is strange, frightening, but I cannot ignore it. Kale's golden eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. The curse. It grows stronger when we are close. It feeds on our bond, our longing. If we are not careful, it could overwhelm us both. I would rather risk it than walk away, Leora said, her voice steady though her heart raced. I want to understand you, Kale. I want to help, even if it is dangerous. For a long moment, Kale said nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Very well. But know this, danger is not only outside. The curse watches, waits, and tests. You must be ready, and so must I. The night deepened, and the garden seemed to close around them. Shadows shifted, carrying whispers that neither could fully hear. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense that something was coming, something that would test the bond they were forming, their trust and their courage. As they turned to leave, Leora felt a chill, a subtle warning that made her skin prickle. Kale's hand brushed hers, not intentionally but enough to make her heart skip a beat. Neither spoke, but the unspoken tension between them was electric, charged with emotion they had yet to name. Suddenly, from the darkness beyond the garden, a faint whisper reached her ears. "The bond grows, but so does the danger. Choose wisely or all will be lost." Leora's breath caught. She looked at Kale, his golden eyes scanning the shadows. For the first time, she understood the true depth of the danger they faced, not just from enemies who lurked in the world, but from the curse itself. And yet, despite the fear, despite the unknown, she felt a strange certainty. She would face it. She would stay near him. She would understand him, and perhaps in doing so find a place where she truly belonged. Kyle's hand moved almost instinctively to the small of her back, guiding her through the moonlit corridors. The palace was alive with shadows, but for the first time in centuries, he did not feel entirely alone. The bond between them had grown, fragile, dangerous, and undeniable. And neither of them could turn back now. The moon hung high over the palace, casting silver light across the towering walls. The gardens were quiet, but the air carried a tension that Leora could feel deep in her chest. Kale moved silently beside her, his golden eyes scanning every shadow, every rustle of leaves. He had sensed the threat hours ago, yet he did not speak, trusting his instincts and his bond with her to guide them through the night. "Stay close," Kyle murmured, his voice almost swallowed by the night. "They are watching, waiting for the right moment." Leora nodded, gripping the folds of her dress. Her heart pounded, not just from fear but from the strange exhilaration of being near him, sharing in the danger. Every movement Kale made was deliberate, precise, his presence both a shield and a warning. She had never felt so alive, so aware, and yet the fear lingered, a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. They reached a hidden passage beneath the palace, a tunnel lined with ancient stones that seemed to hum with energy. Kale's hand brushed hers, not intentionally but enough to send a shiver down her spine. She could feel the pulse of his power, the subtle pull of the curse that lingered beneath his calm exterior. "Are you sure this is safe?" she whispered, her amber eyes wide. Kale's gaze met hers, golden and unflinching. "Nothing here is safe, but this passage will give us the advantage. We can move unseen, strike before they expect us." Leora nodded, swallowing hard. Her pulse raced as they moved deeper into the tunnel. The walls seemed to close in, shadows twisting and shifting in ways that made her skin prickle. She could feel the curse stirring within Kyle, a dark energy that hummed beneath his skin, growing stronger as they drew closer to the danger. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Torches flickered along the walls, illuminating figures clad in black, their faces hidden behind masks. They were armed, their weapons glinting in the torchlight. Leora's breath caught. She had never seen so many, and yet Kale stepped forward, calm and commanding, as if the presence of dozens of enemies could not touch him. "You should have stayed hidden," Kale said, his voice like steel, echoing through the chamber. The masked figures advanced, silent and deadly. Leora's instinct was to run, but she did not. She had learned to trust him, to move with him, to feel the rhythm of his power and presence. Every step he took, she followed, staying close, her empathy alert to every flicker of emotion, every shift in the energy around them. The fight began swiftly. Shadows moved like living things, daggers flashing through the air. Kale was a storm of motion, precise and deadly, striking with strength and grace. Leora watched, awestruck, feeling the surge of adrenaline and the pull of danger that made her pulse race. She wanted to help, to act, but Kale's presence was a shield guiding her, keeping her safe. And then one of the attackers lunged toward her. Kale intercepted, his arm sweeping the figure aside with effortless strength. His golden eyes met hers for a brief moment, filled with a mixture of warning and care. Leora felt her heart leap, a strange heat rising in her chest. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice low but firm. She obeyed, moving closer to him, feeling the warmth of his presence, the steady beat of his heart beneath the armor. She realized that she no longer feared him, not fully. She feared the danger, the curse, the unknown. But the man behind the mask of the Alpha King had become a protector, a guide, and something more. The fight continued, shadows twisting and clashing in the torchlight. Kale moved with precision, every strike calculated, every motion controlled. Leora could sense the pull of the curse, growing stronger with every heartbeat, feeding on the tension, the longing, the bond forming between them. She felt it too, a strange heat that spread through her chest, a pull toward him she could not name. When the last attacker fell, unconscious but alive, Cale finally lowered his guard. His chest heaved with exertion, his golden eyes scanning the chamber, and then they settled on Leora. "You are safe," he said, though his voice carried the weight of exhaustion and the undercurrent of warning. "But understand this, the danger is not over. They will return, and the curse, it will not wait." Leora stepped closer, her hands trembling. "I want to help," she whispered. "I want to be near you, even if it is dangerous." Cale's gaze softened, though the shadows of the curse lingered in his eyes. "You are not just a witness," he admitted almost reluctantly. "You are part of this now, and that makes you vulnerable. The bond we share, it strengthens me, yes, but it also feeds the curse. You must understand the risk." "I understand," Leora said, her voice steady. "I am not afraid. Not of you, not of the danger. I want to stay." Kyle studied her, the faintest hint of a smile brushing his lips. "You are brave, perhaps more than you know. But bravery alone will not protect you. We must act carefully or we will both pay the price." Over the next days, the palace was alive with tension. Leora and Cale trained together, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the forces that sought to exploit the curse and their bond. She learned to move with him, to anticipate his motions, to feel the rhythm of his power and the subtle shifts in the curse's energy. Each day brought them closer, the bond between them growing stronger yet more dangerous. One night, as they rested in the moonlit gardens, Kyle spoke again, his voice quiet but intense. "The curse is feeding, growing stronger. It knows the bond between us and it tests my control. I can feel it gnawing at me, trying to draw me into darkness." Leora's hands found his, their fingers brushing lightly. "Then we face it together," she said softly. "I will not leave you. We will find a way." Kyle's golden eyes held hers, searching, weighing, and then, slowly, he nodded. "Together," he agreed, though the word felt heavy with both hope and warning. The night was calm, yet the tension lingered. The palace walls seemed to whisper of approaching danger, and Leora could feel the subtle pull of the curse, a dark energy that twisted and tugged at her heart. It was terrifying, yet she did not turn away. She had chosen to stay to face the danger with Cale, and the bond they shared had become a lifeline for both of them. And then, as if the night itself had been waiting for this moment, the wind shifted, carrying a sound that made Leora's blood run cold. A figure emerged from the shadows, a messenger of the curse, cloaked in black, eyes glinting with malice. Kyle moved instantly, stepping between Leora and the figure. "Speak," he commanded, his voice like thunder in the silent garden. The figure's voice was low, cold, and unnerving. "The bond grows stronger, but so does the danger. The curse will test you both. One heart will falter and all will be lost." Leora shivered, feeling the weight of the warning. Cale's golden eyes met hers, fierce and protective. "I will not let it harm you," he said, his voice trembling with emotion he rarely showed. "You are mine to protect. No force, no curse will take you from me." The figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving a silence that pressed down on them like a living thing. Leora's hands trembled as she looked up at Kyle. What does it mean?" Cale's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with the weight of centuries of struggle. "It means we must be careful. The curse is not just a shadow, it is a predator, and we are the prey if we falter." Leora nodded, her heart racing. Fear and determination warred within her, yet she felt a strange calm in the presence of Cale. He was terrifying, yes, but he was also her anchor, her guide through the storm of danger and darkness that surrounded them. That night, as they returned to the palace, the bond between them had deepened, forged in the fire of danger, trust, and unspoken understanding. Leora knew the path ahead would be perilous, that the curse would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But she had chosen to stay, to face it with him, and she would not turn back. Cale, in turn, felt something he had not known in centuries, a flicker of hope, a sliver of humanity that the curse had tried to bury. Leora had awakened something within him, something fragile, something powerful. And he knew, with a certainty that both terrified and comforted him, that he would not let her go, not to the curse, not to the shadows, not to anything in the world. The palace lay in uneasy silence, broken only by the distant wind and the faint, eerie glow of torches along the corridors. The danger that had been stalking Kale and Leora had grown, becoming a tangible weight in the air. Shadows clung to the walls like living things, and the pull of the curse was stronger than ever, whispering in Kale's mind and echoing faintly in Leora's heart. "Stay close," Kale said, his voice a low growl as he led her through the twisting corridors. His golden eyes flicked over every corner, every shadow, alert and calculating. The bond between them pulsed, like an invisible thread tying their fates together, and Kale could feel the curse tugging, testing the strength of that connection. "I am not afraid," Leora said softly, though her fingers tightened around his. "Not of the danger, not of the curse. I am with you." Kale's chest tightened at her words. The warmth of her presence was a counterbalance to the darkness of the curse, yet he knew it also made her vulnerable. His hand brushed hers, a silent promise of protection, of trust, and for a brief moment, the palace seemed to hold its breath. They reached the throne room, the heart of the palace where the curse had gathered strength over centuries. Shadows twisted unnaturally in the torchlight, forming shapes that whispered and hissed. Kale's steps were deliberate, his armor gleaming faintly as he moved with purpose and grace. Leora followed closely, her heart racing, feeling both fear and an unexplainable exhilaration. "You must stay behind me," Kyle said, his voice firm but gentle. "The curse knows your bond with me. It will try to use that connection against us." "I trust you," Leora said simply, her voice steady. She could feel the power of the curse, dark and suffocating, reaching for her heart, and yet she did not flinch. Her empathy, her courage had grown stronger alongside their bond. She would not turn away. The shadows shifted violently, and the room seemed to darken further. Whispers of long-forgotten sorrows and anger echoed through the chamber. Kale's golden eyes flared, and he stepped forward, his voice commanding, "Face me if you dare! The curse will not take what is mine." The shadows responded, rising like a tide, forming monstrous shapes that reached toward them. The air thickened, making every breath heavy. Leora could feel the pull, the tug of the dark power, as if it sought to twist her love for Kale into fear, into weakness. "Do not let it touch you," Kale said, his voice low but filled with intensity. "Focus on us, on the bond between us. Let it guide you, not frighten you." Leora's heart pounded as she closed her eyes briefly, centering herself on him. She could feel his strength, his protection, and the invisible thread that connected them. The darkness recoiled slightly, sensing their unity, their refusal to be controlled. Kyle raised his hands, and a golden light, faint at first, shimmered around him. It was the power of his lineage, the essence of his strength tempered by centuries of struggle. The light grew, merging with the energy flowing between them, and Leora felt warmth spread through her body. The curse hissed in frustration, pulling harder, trying to disrupt the bond, but their connection was stronger. Together, they stepped forward. Kale's voice rang out, deep and commanding. "You will not harm her. You will not harm us. This ends tonight." The shadows lunged, but the combined power of Kale's strength and Leora's empathy created a barrier that pushed them back. The room was filled with blinding golden light, and the whispers of the curse became screams of fury. Leora could feel the darkness trying to infiltrate her mind, to turn her fears into reality, but she clung to Kale's presence, to the thread of trust that bound them. "You are stronger than I feared," the shadows hissed, "but not strong enough. One heart will break and all will be lost." Kale tightened his grip on Leora's hand. "No," he said fiercely. "Our hearts are not weak. Together we are unbroken. You will not touch her. You will not touch us." The shadows convulsed, twisting violently, then began to disperse, retreating into the corners of the room as the golden light enveloped them. Leora felt the pull of the curse lessen, the darkness losing its hold on her heart as Kale's strength combined with her courage and empathy. And then, a final whisper, almost a sigh. "The bond. It is unbreakable." "For now," Kyle exhaled, lowering his hands. His golden eyes softened as he looked at Leora. "It is done," he said quietly, "for tonight. But the curse, it never truly disappears. We must remain vigilant. It tests, it waits, it never forgets." Leora stepped closer, her hands brushing against his chest. "I am not afraid," she said, her voice strong. "Not with you." Kale's gaze held hers, a mixture of awe, relief, and something deeper, more vulnerable than he had allowed anyone to see in centuries. "You are extraordinary," he admitted, his voice low. "Your courage, your heart, it has saved me as much as I have saved you. For a long moment, they simply stood together, the golden light from Kale's power fading but leaving warmth in its wake. The shadows had receded, but the palace still hummed with ancient energy, as if it had witnessed the bond between them and acknowledged it. Leora's amber eyes met his golden ones. I want to stay, she whispered. Not just here, not just near you. I want to be with you. Even if the curse tries again, I will not leave. Kyle's hand moved, gently cradling her face. And I will protect you, he said, his voice soft but resolute. Through the darkness, through the shadows, through everything the world throws at us. You are mine to protect, and I will never let you go. A hush fell over the room, the echoes of the past seeming to fade. In that moment, the bond between them was complete. Not just a connection forged by danger, but by trust, courage, and a shared understanding that neither had known they needed. The curse had tested them, but it had not broken them. Instead, it had revealed the depth of their strength and the power of their bond. Kale drew her close, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the quiet of the throne room. The warmth of his body, the steady strength of his presence, and the bond they shared created a sanctuary against the lingering darkness. You are my anchor, he whispered. And you are my light. Leora's heart swelled, and for the first time since she had fallen asleep on his shoulder, she allowed herself to feel safe, to feel wanted, and to understand that this bond, dangerous, intense, and profound, was something neither of them could deny. The palace was silent once more, the threat of the shadows pushed back, at least for now. But Leora and Kale knew the world beyond these walls was still dangerous, still full of unseen forces. Yet they also knew that together, their bond was stronger than any curse, any shadow, any threat. And as they stood in the throne room, hands clasped, hearts aligned, they understood something profound. The curse could test them. The world could challenge them. But as long as they faced it together, no darkness could break the bond between an Alpha King and his Omega.